Jai, Churam Ki Jai, Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Yamuna Maya Ki Jai, Shrimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Samarita Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, Om Ganat, Timuranda Shah, Gananjana, Shalakaya, Chakshurun Midikam, Yena Tasmai, Shigurve Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my divine spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge, while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So, as I mentioned, today we're going to talk about Lord Chaitanya's tour of South India. First of all, Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself, who appeared somewhat over 500 years ago. And he appeared for the purpose, as far as we're concerned, to teach the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the Sankirtan movement, which is the Yuga Dharma for this day and age. So Lord Chaitanya has as his most intimate representative in the present day and age, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who is the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, who is singularly responsible for spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world in every town and village, which is what Lord Chaitanya predicted. So, we are followers of Srila Prabhupada, and by his mercy, we're able to speak about these elevated subject matters. So, for the first 24 years of his life, or his pastimes, I don't know if you should say life when dealing with God, because God has a spiritual body, a Jopisana Vyatma, Uttanam Vishwaropishan. When he comes down, he doesn't come down in the flesh and others' blood body like we have, right? Yeah. Yuck. He comes down in a body made of Satchidananda, that's mentioned in the Brahma Samhita, Satchidananda Vigraha. So we're going to talk about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pilgrimage. So his first portion of his life, he was in Mayapur as a household. That's for 24 years. And in this particular picture, he is taking sannyas at the 24th year of his age. He just went to Katwa and took sannyas from a great sannyasi named Keshava Bharati. And the devotees were lamenting because he was having all of his hair shaved off. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's hair is different than our hair. We're better off without hair. I mean, at least the men. Okay. So, the first thing, after Lord Chaitanya went through some pastimes going to Shantipur, was he went and joined his devotees in a place called Jagannath Puri. Jagannath Puri is south of Bengal, and it's a place where Lord Jagannath is, and Lord Jagannath is the deity of separation from the gopis and residents of Vrindavan. Sometimes people ask, why does Lord Jagannath look like that with big eyes? Because Lord Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra are experiencing separation from the gopis in Vrindavan and the other residents of Vrindavan. And this is the manifestation, the external manifestation of that mood, because Krishna left Vrindavan. Some acharyas say at 12, other acharyas say 16, but he left at a very early age, and he left everyone very bereft. So after, this was in February and March, after he took sannyas. So shortly after that, before even staying for the Rath Yatra ceremony, I mean, first he gave liberation to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was a great impersonalist there. But shortly after that, he told the devotees he wanted to go to South India. And the reason he wanted to go to South India, ostensibly, externally, to give himself an excuse, was that his brother, Visvarup, who you see here, took sannyas when Lord Chaitanya was a little boy. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was wondering where he was. Of course, Lord Chaitanya is God. He knew where he was. But he was using this as an excuse so he could go out on and preach on Sankirtan. So his first thing he did, practically speaking, after he took sannyas and visited some of his devotees in Jagannath-puri, was to go on Sankirtan. Interesting. So Lord Chaitanya said, I want to go to see where this Swarup is, whether he's still alive, what he's doing. And he got permission from Lord Nityananda. But Lord Nityananda, who is Balaram, the same as Balaram played in the tide, Lord Nityananda said, well, if you're going to do that, you should take all of us with you. And Lord Chaitanya said, or thought, not a good idea. Because I want to go alone to these holy places to taste the nectar. And that's interesting that even later on, when Lord Chaitanya was going to go to Vrindavan, there was a large crowd following him. And Rupa and Sanatana Goswami advised him, you're going like in a big circus, you should go to Vrindavan in a very quiet, peaceful way to meditate on the Supreme Lord's pastimes. So Lord Chaitanya wanted to do that in South India too. And Lord Nityananda said, well, at least take someone. And then Lord Chaitanya said, well, I'm not going to take any of you because then you'll think I'm playing favorites. So I'm just going to take a new man, completely new man. And that happened to be someone named Krishnadas, a brahmachari, a very simple brahmachari, who later on had a little spiritual trouble during the trip, but we'll talk about that. So before Lord Chaitanya left, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asked him to see this great devotee named Ramananda Roy when he went to Vijayanagara. So now Lord Chaitanya is leaving. And as he was traversing the different jungles, he was chanting this wonderful mantra, which some of you are familiar with, that, Krishna protect me, Krishna, 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 hey. And then it goes on, I'm not going to do the whole thing. Krishna, 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 Pahimam. And then Rakshamam, Rama, Raghava, Rama, Raghava, Rama, Raghava. Rakshamam, which means protect me, save me. And then finally, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahimam. So this is very important. This is like the Bhagavad Gita verse, Avaya Sattva Samashadi Jnana Yoga Vavastatahi, that someone who is sannyas, or wants to be a sannyasi, should be free of fear. That's one of the qualities. Why? Because he has that knowledge, or she has that knowledge of what? What knowledge? Does anyone know? Krishna is always there, and whatever happens, it's for the best. Even if what happens is a little traumatic. That trauma is meant to bring us to Krishna. Wow. One has to keep that in mind all the time. Krishna is protecting me. And Krishna is in my heart. Krishna is in the heart of all the animals. Later on, when Lord Chaitanya went through the Jharkhanda forest, not on this trip, he had the animals, wild animals like tigers and lions and bears and elephants and deer, just making friends with each other and actually kissing each other and dancing and chanting Hare Krishna. So don't try that. I mean, don't go into the lion's cage at the zoo and just say, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Well, maybe it's a good idea because you go back to Godhead. As Krishna says in the Gita, yeah, whatever you remember at the time of death, what? Good idea. Go to the North Carolina Zoo and ask for and chant Hare Krishna to the lions as they chant Shavira of the Jujal. So anyway, and so that at that time in India, much of South India and Central India was a jungle. Nowadays, you go to Delhi and it's a jungle, but that's a different concept of a jungle, right? And the air is polluted. But so the first place Lord Chaitanya went, which is, I actually did most of this tour myself with several devotees. Actually, some of the devotees, is Sadhvi here? Sadhvi went with us on that trip. Anyone else here went with us on that trip? No. So we did this trip, at least most of the trip, following Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's footsteps. We went to this place called, and Lord Chaitanya, forget about us, went to the place called Kurma Kshetra. Now the word kurma means tortoise. So it's a place of the tortoise. So why are we worshiping tortoises? Because the Lord, Krishna, has so many different interesting incarnations, as many as species of life there are, that's as many incarnations as Krishna has. So he has a tortoise incarnation, an elephant incarnation, and even an amoeba incarnation. But we don't read about it, but that's what the Vedas say. So this is Kurmakshetra, where you see many tortoises. And actually, when we went there, we were playing with some of the tortoises. And we were received very, very nicely. Isn't it something? They actually put a turban on my head and fed all the devotees. It was quite nice. In this Kurmakshetra place, which is just south of Jagannath Puri, Lord Caitanya performed a miracle. And the miracle was there was this person who had leprosy. His name was Vasudev. And this person who had leprosy was such a great devotee and so compassionate. And this is really something. When he had worms in his body because of the leprosy, and a worm fell out, he would put it back in. He was considering, as Krishna states, or as the Upanishad states, that all living entities are our brothers and sisters. So he was very concerned with the worms. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced this devotee, and his leprosy went away, as you see on the slide. And this devotee wanted to follow Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at that particular time. And there was another devotee too, and I don't have a slide of him, but there was another devotee too who wanted to follow Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was known as Kurma Brahman. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, don't follow me, stay home and become a guru and help the people that you know and chant Hare Krishna. So this is Lord Chaitanya's injunction. The most important thing is to act compassionately. Lord Chaitanya had two main branches of his teaching. One is Jivadoy, compassion for others, and the other one is Nama Ruchi, a taste for chanting. So these two things are most important. Even if you do everything right, you don't get these two things right, forget it. The Bhagavatam says, Shrameva hi kevalam. You're just spinning your wheels, wasting your time. So, and even if you do everything else wrong, and you get don't do everything wrong, and you do these two things right, you've got it made. So, this is the next place he went is called Singhachalam, which we're proceeding further south. And this is the Jayada Nrsimha temple in Singhachalam, which is in Vishakhapatnam. Anyone here been to Vishakhapatnam? Yes, some of you have been to Vishakhapatnam. This is in Andhra Pradesh. And this temple is very unique because it has a deity of Krishna that looks like a Shiva Linga. Now, the reason he looks like a Shiva Linga is actually he doesn't. He actually is like the combined deity of Varaha Nrsimha. That means a boar and Lord Nrsimhadev. But they put sandalwood pulp on him all year round. And it forms like a cone around him. And the reason for that, Prabhupada explained this. He said to keep him cool-headed. Because he's a ferocious deity. So you want to keep his head cool. So this is very, very beautiful deity there. And this is actually reminiscent of the story of Prahlad Maharaj, when Prahlad Maharaj wanted to see the combined form of Varaha and Nrsimha. So he appeared in this particular form before Prahlad Maharaj. And when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to these Nrsimha temples, because Andhra Pradesh is famous for temples of Lord Nrsimhadev all over, and also Hanuman too. There's actually giant statues of Hanuman when you go into some of the villages. Anyone seen that? Isn't it giant? I mean, as tall as this dome. Seriously. I mean, it's really ecstatic. So Lord Chaitanya began to chant this song, or this poem, when he saw Lord Nrsimhadev, and I'll just chant it really quickly. Shri Nrsimha, Jai Nrsimha, Jai Jai Nrsimha, Plada Desha, Jaya Padma, Mukha Padma Bringa, Ugropyan Ugra Evayam, Swa Bhaktanam Rikeshari, Kesha Riva, Swa Hotanam, Anye Sham Ugra Vikramaha. And so, all glory is to the Lord Nrsingadev, all glory is to Nrsingadev, who is the Lord of Prahlad Maharaj, and like a honeybee is always engaged in beholding the lotus-like face of the goddess of fortune. Although very ferocious, the lioness is very kind to her cubs. Similarly, although very ferocious to non-devotees like Hiranyakashipu, Lord Nrsingadev is very, very soft and kind to devotees like Prahlad Maharaj. In fact, when Prahlad Maharaj came up and pacified Lord Nrsingadev put him on his lap and licked him like a cat licks its master. This is a pure cat. Not like your cat. Anyway, the next place Lord Chaitanya went was where Ramananda Roy was. This was along the banks of this great river called the Godavari River. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met this great devotee, Ramananda Roy, who incidentally is Vishaka, an incarnation of Vishaka from Krishna's pastimes. And he had a wonderful discussion with Ramananda Roy. First of all, he showed that he was a sannyasi, a very high-class Brahmin sannyasi, and Ramananda Roy was considered a Shudra. And so he showed that knowing the science of Krishna, if one knows the science of Krishna, it doesn't matter what caste one is in. Kiva Vipra, Kiva Vyasi, Shudra Kenana, Ye Krishna Tatvaveta, say Guru Hoy. And he discussed the most intimate exchanges of Radha and Krishna with this devotee, Ramananda Roy. There's a whole book that Srila Prabhupada wrote about this. It's called the Ramananda Samvada. And anyway, it's not available in print right now, but it is on the internet if you look it up. So these are different pictures. And finally, Lord Chaitanya revealed to Ramananda Roy that he was Krishna in the mood of Radharani. So when Ramananda Roy looked at him, he saw Radha and Krishna. Very intimate exchanges. The next place that Lord Chaitanya went to is called the Mallikarjuna Temple. It's a Lord Shiva temple. It's one of the Divya Deshas, one of the important temples in India. And the next place was another location where Lord Nrsingadev is. It's called Ahobilam. Anyone here has been to Ahobilam? One person. I've been to Ahobilam. Even those of you from Andhra Pradesh haven't been to Ahobilam. It's actually a very important pilgrimage place. It's where there's 9 deities of Lord Nrsingadev. Actually here there's 10 pictures, but there's 9 main deities, the Nava deities. And you have Lord Nrsingadev in his yoga posture, in his blessing posture, in his ugra posture. Ugra means angry posture. And the devotees there are just very dedicated to Lord Nrsingadev. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu walked all over Ahobilam and was able to see even the pillars of this temple. There's a picture of a pillar. This is not the deity on the altar. All the pillars, because it's a very ancient temple, thousands of years old, all the pillars are hand-carved with the images of Lord Nrsingadev and Lord Nrsingadev's activities. Next place, so we're going very quickly, is Siddhavrata Bhatta, and this is where Lord Chaitanya met a great devotee of Lord Ram and convinced him to chant Hare Krishna. So first of all, this devotee couldn't stop chanting Ram, 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 Sita Ram. And by Lord Chaitanya's association, he began to chant Hare Krishna, which is non-different from Sita Ram. Actually, it's mentioned in the Vedic literatures that 1,000 names of Vishnu is equivalent to 1 name of Ram. And 3 names of Ram are equivalent to 1 name of Krishna. And chanting the Hare Krishna mantra is the most potent way of chanting the name of Krishna and Ram. So the name of Krishna and the Hare Krishna mantra is obviously Krishna. Hare refers to Radharani, and Ram refers to Lord Ram, Balaram, and Radha Raman. 3 in 1. When he was there, this is this devotee who he convinced to chant Hare Krishna. He was a Brahmin devotee. Next, he went to a place of Lord Vamanadev, who was called Trivikram. There's actually a temple dedicated to, we're going to see the deity, one of the deities in a second. And this is called Trimata. Anyone's been to Trimata? No. See, you have to go with us in South India sometime. Experience this. And in Trimata, there's the deity. The Lord appeared in Trimata to please a Murkandu Rishi. He wanted to see the Lord in this particular form. There's a beautiful old temple. This temple is also thousands of years old. Proceeding quickly, hope we're not losing anybody, we go to Vadachalam. This is a Lord Shiva temple, one of the most important temples in India, where Lord Shiva is worshipped by Govinda, who is Ramanujacharya's brother. And here's the deity of Lord Shiva. This deity was taken care of, as I mentioned before, by Govinda. There's another picture of the deity. So then Lord Chaitanya had a very interesting encounter at this place. He was challenged by some Buddhists. And the Buddhists, they wanted to trick Lord Chaitanya because Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu defeated them philosophically. And so they thought, we are going to feed him some impure food and cause him to lose his caste. So they gave him some very impure food, which is probably meat. And they put it on a plate and they said, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, here is Mahaprasadam. And so they brought it before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could even touch it, a big bird came down, picked up the plate, dropped it all on the head of the chief Buddhist monk. Chief Buddhist monk knocked completely unconscious. He was in a coma. And the other monks, his followers, just got really upset. Went to Lord Chaitanya, said, save us. What should we do? And he said, repeat after me. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And so they repeated. And he said, now chant it in the ear of your guru. So they chanted, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And Lord Chaitanya had initiated them. No need for formality, courses. And they became gurus and initiated their own guru. And then they became Vaishnavas. Nice, isn't it? Because Buddhism has some truths, like they say the material world is miserable, right on. Attachment causes the misery. Give up the attachment, give up the misery in the Eightfold Path. And that's fine. But you cannot give up attachment unless you're attached to something else. Krishna in the Gita says, Rasa Varjam Racha Yasha Paramajashrani Vartate. If you have a higher taste, then you can actually give up something that's lower. So that's what happened with the Buddhists. Finally, we get to Tirumala, which is above Tirupati, and here's Venkateshwara. And I'm sure many of you have been to see Venkateshwara, frankly everybody. And sometimes you have to stand on line for many, many days to actually see Venkateshwara. There's many hills, there's Tirumala hills, and sometimes these hills are considered to be different parts of the face of Balaji or Vishnu, and sometimes they're considered parts of the spine of Lord Vishnu, but they're considered incarnations of Seshanag or of Lord Vishnu, the whole hills. So when you have this great devotee Ramanujacharya, he wouldn't step on the hill when he went up to see the deities. How did he get up? He went up on his knees. He went up on his knees, and to this day, there are people who walk up on their knees to see the deity. I actually walked on my feet, I'm sorry. But there are many devotees who are actually walking up on their knees because they consider that to be sacred grounds. And here's another picture of the Tirumala Hills. Very, very beautiful. And this actually picture was taken from the top of our temple in Tirupati. We have a beautiful temple with guest house. If any of you ever go to Tirupati or Tirumala, please stay at our ISKCON temple. It's right at the bottom of the path going up the hill. And they'll give you a first-class reception, and also they'll arrange for you to have a quick darshan with Balaji, so you don't have to stand online for days. Next place is Vijayawada, where there's a wonderful deity called Pananushinga. And I think some of you have been there, right? Anyone's been to Pananushinga? Yes, one person. Okay. One person, wow, I have. And also Sadhvi has been there. And this deity is known, he's actually a self-manifested deity from the hill. And you walk up the hill, it's called Mangal Giri, means auspicious hill. And you walk up the hill to see him, and it's amazing. You pour sugar water, gur water, into his mouth, and no matter how much you pour into his mouth, half comes out. Even if you poured like 10,000 gallons, he would drink half and the other half would come out. Or if you pour one thimbleful, he would drink half and half would come out. And we drink his remnants. Here's a picture of the hill. And this is a wonderful experience. When you go up there also, there's a place where the demigods and Vishnu come down, not Vishnu, but the demigods come down to see him at night. Has anyone seen that place? I showed you that place, I believe. You don't remember. Okay. And so the next place Lord Chaitanya went to is called Kanchi, Kanchipuram. Anyone's been to Kanchipuram here? 1, 2, 3. Madhav's been. That's nice. You were just there this year, right?
Many years ago.
Many years ago. And of course there's a Vishnu Kanchi and a Shiva Kanchi there. There's different sections of the city. And in the Vishnu Kanchi section, there's this main deity called Varada Daraja, which is the wish-fulfilling deity. Once upon a time, one of Ramanujacharya's disciples, Kuresh, had a conflict with the king. I'm not going to get into the details, and his eyes were put out. And Ramanujacharya said, go before this deity and ask for your eyes back. And this is the deity that gave him his eyes back. It's called Varada Daraja, the king of wish-fulfilling deities. And this, of course, is the deity, the main deity that Ramanujacharya was worshipping before he went to Sri Rangam. So these are different pictures of Varada Daraja and the temple. Next, we go to Shiva Kanchi. And in Shiva Kanchi, the story is that Parvati underwent many austerities to marry Lord Shiva under a mango tree. And then Shiva sent different tests to test her steadfastness. And Lord Vishnu, he even created a fire, but Lord Vishnu cooled everything down with Ganges water. And then she made a Shiva Linga there, and that Shiva Linga, you see that picture in there in the middle, is being worshipped by Parvati. This is also a very ancient temple. This is the Shiva Linga. And then the final thing there is a place called Panchi Tirtha, not Panchi Tirtha, Pakshi Tirtha, that's right. There's where every day 2 birds come and they're fed. And it's described that these 2 birds have been coming since time immemorial. The story is that these were 2 sages who were cursed by Lord Shiva to take the form of birds and remain there. So every day at noon, these 2 birds come to take some grains. Then we travel further south. We go to the Vrittakola Boar Temple. This is a boar incarnation temple of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Next place is Devashtan. And Kumbha Konan. This is a Shiva Kshetra. And then finally, Srirangam. Srirangam is where Lord Ranganath resides. And at this temple, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spent 4 months during the rainy season, the Chaturmasha period. And he stayed at the house of Venkatabhata. And he was feeling so much separation from Lord Jagannath, he actually carved his own Jagannath deities there. These are deities, actually I took this picture. These are deities that are worshipped across the hall from where Venkatabhata was, where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stayed. Very unique deities of Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. Also in Sri Rangam, there's this samadhi. I don't know if you can see this picture here of Sripad Ramanujacharya. His body has been preserved and wrapped. And so he is still, or his body, his transcendental body, is still sitting up there in his samadhi. So you can still see that today. Along with Lord Ranganath, and there's the deities. Again, the Caitanya Mahaprabhu carved. Now, there's interesting stories about this place of Sri Rangam and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's stay at the house of Venkatabhata. Venkatabhata was a devotee of Lakshmi Narayan. And he was having, let's say, a very funny discussion with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about the superiority of Radha Krishna versus Lakshmi Narayan. And finally, he accepted that Radha Krishna worship is much more intimate, a higher worship than Lakshmi Narayan worship, and they're the same persons. And Radharani and Lakshmi are non-different. I'm not going to get into all the details. And he took up Krishna consciousness. And his son, little Gopal Bhatta, who you see here when he was older, later on became Gopal Bhatta Goswami, one of the main Goswamis, or personalities who excavated Vrindavan and established the holy places and wrote Vaishnava literatures. And Gopal Bhatta Goswami is also famous for having the self-manifest deity of Radha Raman. That was during Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's stay there. Also, while he was there, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met a Brahmin who was illiterate. And this Brahmin had been given the duty by his Guru Maharaj to read the Bhagavad Gita every day. So most of us, we would say to our Guru Maharaj, what?
Can't do it.
Impossible. But Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master, said one interesting thing. He said, impossible is a word in a fool's dictionary. Because with the order of the spiritual master, anything is possible. And I experienced that with Prabhupada when the devotees produced 17 books in 2 months, which was actually impossible. Prabhupada chastised us for saying impossible to him. He said, all your stuff is useless if you can't do it. He was actually really heavy with us. So, anyway, so this devotee, he was picking up the Gita and just flipping through the pages, and everyone was laughing at him. You know, what is this guy reading for? He doesn't know how to read. And he was crying. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, why are you crying? And he said, I'm crying because I'm thinking of how amazing it is that the Lord has become the Sarati. That means the driver, like the Uber driver. You know what Uber is? No. Anyway, he's become the driver for his devotee. You know, here's God, and he's driving. He was just like immersed in the mood of amazement. And Lord Chaitanya said, you're the real knower of the Bhagavad Gita, because this is what he was meditating on. This bhav, this emotion, this rasa, this taste. And that's actually why one is in Krishna consciousness. So one can have a taste of the nectar, as Prabhupada said, the nectar we are always anxious for. And that nectar is the relationship of love. We were speaking about this morning, that only through love can one remain fixed on a particular goal. That's the only way one can be Eke Ha Kurunandana. So this Brahman was very much appreciated by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then we have Rishabha Hill, where Lord Rishabhadev, who is an incarnation of Krishna, entered into the fire. And here's the deities in Rishabha Hill. It's called Rishabha Parvat, which means hill. So Lord Rishabhadev was executing this process called Jada Yoga. Jada Yoga is a process by which you act like you're a complete idiot. Well, some people do it without doing Jada Yoga anyway. Not going to mention any names. So you act like a complete idiot, so you become detached from the material world. And Lord Rishabhadev was showing us a particular process. Of course, that process is not applicable in today's day and age. Some people still follow him. In the Jain religion, they still follow him. Especially one of his followers is called Mahavir, and they follow him too. Then, finally, Lord Chaitanya meets directly with Lord Shiva and Parvati in this place called Sri Shaila. And he has a discussion, and not only that, Parvati gets a chance to cook for him and serve him, and he gets to sit down and have a whole discussion directly with Lord Shiva. This is not a temple we're talking about. There are temples there, but this is not a temple we're talking about right now. This direct exchange between Lord Chaitanya and Lord Shiva about preaching Krishna consciousness. And this is the temple that's there. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's not the temple. This is Madurai. This is the temple of the goddess Meenakshi. And she was married to Lord Shiva, Meenakshi Devi, Madurai. And in the Madurai temple, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu encountered a Brahmin who was said to, actually, first of all, he was going to serve Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu lunch. And then, when it was time for lunch, he said, he was meditating on Ram and Sita, that Lakshman has not brought the ingredients yet. And so Lord Chaitanya said, just prepare lunch. So he prepared lunch really late, like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then the Brahmin started fasting. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, why are you fasting? This is an important story. He said, I'm fasting because Sita Devi was touched by that Ravan. Then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, understanding what had actually happened, said, Sita Devi could never have been touched by Ravan. Ravan would have died immediately. You will find out later on how Sita Devi was a Maya Sita, or an imitation Sita, that was touched by Ravan. So we'll see how later on Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu verifies this with Shastra. This devotee's name was Ramdas Vipra. Then he goes to a temple of Mahendra Shaila where Parashuram lives. And he met Parashuram. Parashuram is the warrior incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who did a lot of Kshatriyas in. And drove a lot of Kshatriyas to Europe. Actually, Prabhupada said a lot of the people from Europe, because that's like me, genetically, are descendants of the Kshatriyas that Parashuram drove out of India. Did you know that? Pretty good. We ran away from Parashuram, my ancestors. It says that when I did a DNA test. So actually, not really. So then Lord Chaitanya proceeded further south, all the way to Rameshwaram, where he saw the beginnings of the bridge. It goes all the way to Lanka. And these are some pictures of, actually this is the next slide is Danush Tirtha. But these are different pictures of the building of the bridge. And even the scientists have analyzed through satellite photos that this is an artificial bridge. They call it Adam's Bridge. But actually it was the bridge built by the monkeys. And this is the actual place where Lord Ram took bath. It's called Danush Tirtha. Danush Tirtha means the place of the bow. This is where Lord Ram also aimed his bow at the ocean and scared the ocean, and the ocean told him he had to build a bridge across. Whoops, I think we skipped it, yeah. And then finally, at this Setu Bandha, which is actually where the bridge was built, Lord Chaitanya finds the Kurma Purana. And in this Kurma Purana, the story of Sita being taken away by Agni is told. And then the false or Maya Sita being put in her place. So Ravana actually kidnapped the Maya Sita. Incidentally, Maya Sita later on fell in love with Ram, because she was chanting Ram the whole time. So later on, she appeared and married Ram. I'm not going to tell the whole story. That's a long story. That's Padmavati. Yeah, Padmavati appeared later on. And that's Maya Sita. And so that's why you have Maya Sita married to Vishnu and Tirupati. And then here's that story that I mentioned before. Before Ravan actually appeared to kidnap Sita Devi, the real Sita Devi went with Agni, and when Sita Devi entered the fire later on, after Ram had conquered Ravan, the real Sita Devi came out being carried by Agni. And there's another place in India that Lord Chaitanya visited called the Gajendra Mokshana, where Gajendra, the elephant, received his liberation. This is the temple at Gajendra Mokshana. Malaya Parvat, where Agastya Muni resides. That's Agastya Muni. Finally, Kanyakumari. In Kanyakumari, the story is that Lord Shiva was delayed in arriving to marry Parvati. So this demon appeared called Bana, and Bana was killed by her because this demon, Bana, can only be killed by a young virgin girl. And this deity was installed by Parashuram. This, of course, is very south. Then we get to this Malara Desh. And in this Malara Desh place, very isolated place in South India, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a very interesting encounter with some gypsies there. The gypsies were called Bhattaharis. And these Bhattaharis lured his servant away. That shows that even if you're with God, you can be lured away by Maya or illusion. And how did they lure him away? They lured him away with a very beautiful girl. And Lord Chaitanya went there to rescue his servant, and they rushed up to him with swords and choppers, and Lord Chaitanya, by his transcendental energy, caused those swords and choppers to turn on the Bhattaharis, these gypsies, and cut them to pieces. And he rescued his servant. So it's also indicative that Krishna will always rescue his devotees. Krishna says, Konteya pratijanihi, mame bhakta pranashati. My devotee will never perish. So even if we try to leave Krishna, Krishna will always come back and drag us back somehow or other. Of course, why make Krishna do that? Don't leave. Then, in the Adi Keshava temple, it's another very ancient temple, a very isolated temple. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu discovered the Brahma Samhita that we are chanting. Because this Brahma Samhita was very rare to find a copy of the Brahma Samhita. So Lord Chaitanya had copies made, and he took this and he chanted this, practically speaking, every day. It's one of his main. So this Adi Keshava temple has a whole story behind it. Is where Adi Keshava Swami defeated a demon named Keshi. So the demon's wife prayed to the river Ganges and another river and to create destruction, but it was in vain. And finally she surrendered to the Lord, and the rivers formed a circle around this particular temple, and the deity is made of 16,008 shilas. You find many of these South Indian deities are made of shilas. This is, of course, the picture of Lord Brahma hearing or perceiving the spiritual realm upon which he spoke and wrote the Brahma Samhita. The next temple is called the Ananta Padmanabha Temple. And of course, that temple is made from 12,000 Shalagram shilas. Lord Chaitanya, actually we're almost finished. He visited the Sringeri Math, which is the place of Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya is considered an incarnation of Lord Shiva. There's different pictures of the Sringeri Math. Then finally, not finally because we keep saying finally, then he went to Matsya Tirtha, which has a deity of Lord Matsya, not only a deity of Lord Matsya, but there it takes care of fish, many fish. It's a very ancient temple. He went to Udupi, and I think Madhava went to Udupi this year, right?
Yeah.
And this is the place of Sripad Madhvacharya, a great spiritual master in our disciplic succession. And Madhvacharya's followers are called the Tattvavadis, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a discussion with them and actually converted them to the Gaudiya Vaishnava understanding. And this temple, there's a beautiful pond in the middle, and there's a deity that Sripad Madhvacharya discovered in the ocean. It was covered with sandalwood, and that's Udupi Krishna. Anybody here has been to see Udupi Krishna? Udupi Krishna.
It's
Very-
worshipped by Rukmini.
Yeah, it's worshipped by Rukmini. And there's another deity there too, which you probably didn't see, which is the deities that were worshipped in the sun god dynasty since time immemorial of Sita and Ram. The story goes as follows. Whoops, it's getting late. The story goes as follows that Vivaswan was worshipping deities of Sita and Ram. He gave those deities to Manu. Manu gave those deities to Ikshvaku. And finally, they gave those deities to Sita and Ram. And Ram didn't want to worship his own deities. He put them in a closet. Then there was a Brahmin who had taken a vow not to eat until he saw Ram that day. Ram felt sorry for him, gave him those deities. Those deities were later on given to Hanuman, and those deities were later on given to Madhvacharya, and those deities are there in Udupi right now. So make sure when you go back to Udupi, go ask for those deities. Ask to see those deities. Very important. There's another interesting story. Next, Lord Chaitanya visited this lake called Pancha Apsara. I'd like to play what that is. Here's some of the Apsaras. Because Pancha Apsara. That's actually funny. So, actually what happened is that they tried, there was this sage, Achyuta Rishi, who was meditating, just minding his own business. And Lord Indra thought, we're going to give him some trouble here. So he sent down these 5 beautiful Apsaras from the heavenly planets, and they did a little dance in front of him. And Achyuta Rishi said, become crocodiles. And later on, they were rescued by Arjuna. So this is a picture of 2 of the girls. Before they were rescued, obviously. After they were cursed. This is another important place called Gokarna, where Duryodhana was hiding. Remember, he was hiding in the water at the end of the Mahabharata, trying to avoid Bhimsena? So he was under the water here. And then finally, Bhimsena taunted him. He came out, and then they had that club fight, and Bhimsena broke his thighs. Then we go to the place of Tukaram in Maharashtra. And Tukaram is considered a great saint. Sometimes they call him Mahaprabhu of Maharashtra. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught him Sankirtan and initiated him in Krishna consciousness. Lord Chaitanya also discovered at this point that his brother Shankaranya, who was previously Visvarup, had left his body at this particular location. So here he is, Vitala. And this is Vitala Rukmini temple. And this is the deity that Tukaram would worship. Tukaram has Sankirtan parties, just like Gaudiya Vaishnava Sankirtan parties, except they're using different drums and different names of Krishna. Then Lord Chaitanya went to the Krishnaveni River, and in the Krishnaveni River, there was this great devotee. Lord Chaitanya didn't meet him, but his book was there. It's called the Krishna Karnamrita by Bilvamangal Thakur. And this is one of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's favorite books. This book deals with the intimate exchanges between Radha and Krishna. Bilvamangal Thakur was blind, and Krishna personally took care of him. Krishna personally held his hand. This is another very famous place called Mount Rishimukh. And you've all heard about this. This is where Ram met Hanuman for the first time. Rishimukh, where Ram met Hanuman. And right there, Ram embraced Lord Chaitanya, embraced these 7 tall trees. These are the trees that Lord Ram fired his arrow through to prove his strength. Right? To Sugriva. And Lord Chaitanya sent them all back to home, back to Godhead. Amazing, amazing pastimes. This is the Dandakaranya forest, which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also visit. This is the area where the Dandakaranya forest is. And in this Dandakaranya forest, this of course is not a Caitanya pastime, we find many things happen. Sita saw the golden deer. Ram came and kidnapped the Maya Sita. That beautiful girl, Surpanaka, tried to propose to Ram and Lakshman. And very important place. And Panchavati is also a very important place. And this is Nasik, which is considered one of the holy places. Finally, this is the end of the trip. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes back to see Ramananda Roy on the banks of the Godavari, and he tells Ramananda Roy to renounce this world, join him in Jagannath Puri, and spend the last days of his pastimes in discussing Radha and Krishna's activities in Vrindavan. Then Lord Chaitanya goes back to Jagannath Puri and continues his Sankirtan movement. So this is a brief, we missed a few places, actually, quite a few places, but we didn't have a lot of time. This is a brief story of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's South Indian tour. The main thing is that Lord Chaitanya was giving his mercy. It's not so much that Lord Chaitanya was only interested in seeing the temples, but he was interested in bringing people to Krishna consciousness, because it described anyone who saw Lord Chaitanya became a pure devotee, and anyone who saw the person who saw Lord Chaitanya became a pure devotee. So it's like disciplic succession there. So, and Lord Chaitanya made the whole South India Krishna conscious at that particular point. So this is the reason he went. And also to remember his pastimes in the various incarnations. So, thank you very much. So any questions? Does anyone have any questions about this tour? South India. Rishikesh.
Did you go over Gujarat also?
Yeah, some of the, it's not in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, but some of the biographers said he did go to Gujarat and he did go to Dwarka. But it's not in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that was in Dwarka at that particular point.
You mentioned two places, Gajendra Moksha
Yeah.
and Gokarna. And in the Bhagavatam, it describes Trikuta Mountain as being somewhere in the heavenly planets. So how is it that...
That's an interesting question. How is it? And also it describes, talking about Ahobalam, that the pillar that Lord Nrsimha broke was in the heavenly planet, was in a higher planet. So the way that we usually understand this is that there are replicas of these places on the Earth planet. Just like you have embassies of different countries within America, or the embassies of America in different countries. So basically it's a representation or manifestation of that particular abode.
And then referring to Gokarna, where Duryodhana hid in the lake, that's very, very, very far from Kurukshetra.
I know.
So how did he get there?
They got there somehow or other, that's the story. It is very far from Kurukshetra.
Didn't he do his tour for 6 years?
6 years?
How long was his South Indian tour?
The tour of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in South India was for several years, yeah.
That's what I thought. So
It's a long tour. So how we got there, I don't know. You have to ask him the next time you see Duryodhana. So any other questions or comments?
So when you talk about Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, and then Hare is Radha, the female energy of
Yeah.
the divine. So could you say, like, Radha Krishna, Sita Ram? Or
You could.
It's the same sort of.
You could say that, yeah.
Okay, because I've said it and I wanted to make sure it was.
Actually, but the way Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanted the mantra, which is the, authorized way we chant mantras, would be Hare, the standard Hare Krishna mantra. And if you go to Vrindavan, some people chant, Radha Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Radha Radha. And but the authorized way, and this is also from the Puranas too. The authorized way to chant is the Hare Krishna, the way we chant.
I think sort of sometimes I chant it that way and then I picture the different energies.
That's fine.
Or have something to.
Yeah. Actually, each word in the Maha Mantra is in the vocative form, calling out, Hare, oh Radharani, Krishna, oh Krishna, Ram, oh Ram. So, therefore, if you're chanting and tears are not coming from your eyes, something's wrong with your heart. Go see a doctor. No. No, the Bhagavatam describes the heart is steel framed if we're chanting and not feeling any emotion. We're chanting, because it should be crying out. And the Lord Caitanya speaks like that in the Shikshashtaka. He says, I Nanda Tanuja Kinkaram, which is the same thing. Oh, Nanda Tanuja, son of Nanda Maharaj, I am your eternal servant. Patita Mama, I'm fallen. There's a deep emotion in that. So when we chant, we should chant with our hearts. Not simply with the voice, but it has to be from the heart. Of course, professional singers say you should chant from your stomach anyway. Yeah, they say breathe from your stomach. But anyway, you chant from your heart. There has to be some bhav there. Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna, save me. Engage me in your service. Okay? So, I think we have to end now because my sponsor is saying. So, all glories to His divine grace, Srila Prabhupada, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai.